Welcome to episode 31 of The Whiners. I am the very handsome and modest Ryan Milton, joining you from Austin, Texas, and over there in Wilmington, North Carolina is my co-host, America's sweetheart, Jeff Norman. And tonight we have a special guest, Canadian writer, podcaster, and journalist Megan Murphy, originally from Vancouver. And a few little highlights. You are running on the People's Party of Canada. You've recently been debanked. You were suspended in the past from Twitter. I like this part, for tweeting men aren't women. You're critical of censorship, exploiting women in media. So it's a big time coming up here. April 28th, right? That is the writing...
Monday.
Yeah.
The Canadian election, Monday the 28th, and then we'll see if Canada's done or not done.
So Megan has a lot of very prestigious credits, but you left out maybe the biggest one. She is an adult human female.
Exactly.
There it is. It says it right there.
Exactly.
We may need to see your papers or something, though, but for now, we'll take your word for it.
I've got my ID.
Yeah, you were thrown off back in, what was it, 2018, I guess was the first time that's when you said men aren't women, and I felt offended when you said there's no such thing as a male feminist. I really do want to hear about that. But what's happening now with the campaign? I read your Substack on the debanking. What's going on now with that?
Yeah. So whenever people introduce me with my bio from Wikipedia, I'm like, oh Lord, this is going to be really confusing because
I love this stuff.
So
Are you
old,
kidding me?
but it's so old. I mean, I'm not so focused on the feminism stuff anymore. But I did get suspended, supposedly permanently, but Elon brought me back for 4 years after tweeting men aren't women and then referring to a man as he, the crimes of the century. So I'm running for the People's Party of Canada, which is a small populist party. It's the only party that knows that men are not women, and goes in hard on free speech, civil liberties, has been opposed to the COVID mandates from the get-go, supported the Freedom Convoy, all that stuff. So there's no other party that I would ever consider running for. But the day that my candidacy was confirmed by Elections Canada, I discovered that my bank account was frozen, my one Canadian bank account that I've had since I was 10 years old at Vancity. It's actually a credit union, not a bank, Vancity Credit Union. And
what's going on with Canada? I mean, I thought about the trucker convoy in 22. I know you have stood up for them. What's going on, though? That it's like the whole country, in the population, people have to be somewhat upset by all of these things that you're talking about it very matter-of-factly, but it's crazy. This is insane stuff.
I know. I mean, it's been going on for 10 years, for the whole liberal reign. And of course, things got much worse during COVID. And I had thought that people woke up. When the trucker convoy happened, I was just thrilled beyond belief because I had at the time sort of almost given up on Canada. I didn't know that they had it in them. And that was such a huge movement of people, unafraid, courageous, risking so much to demand the return of our charter rights. The government is still trying to criminalize many of those who were involved. They're trying to throw two leaders of the convoy, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber, in prison for 2 years, still based on, really total BS invented charges. It was a legal, peaceful protest. I had so much hope after that happened, and it seems to have sort of disappeared. And it seems like there's just way too many people in Canada with their heads in the sand who don't see what's going on. And very much think that they do see what's going on. That's the funny part, is that Canadians have this thing where they sort of think they're better than everybody else. They're more educated, they're more informed, and yet they're trapped in their little bubbles on their algorithms. And once you
I
leave,
like that you hold the public accountable. See, politicians tend not to do that. I don't know if it's the best strategy, actually, but I like it. Politicians tend to oh, well, we'll criticize our opponents, we'll criticize the media, but we'll as voters. I find it refreshing that you do that because it's so necessary. It is really a big part of the problem, is that ordinary people need to be held accountable. The other thing you do, which is very honest, is you say you don't expect to win. That was shocking to me. I heard you on another podcast say that.
I'm a realist.
Yeah. Every no matter how minor the party is, no matter how far-fetched the prospects are, every other politician, every other candidate I've ever heard has always said they're going to win.
Well, I'm not a politician, so maybe that's where I went wrong. But
I mean, that's
I'm
supposed
too
to be the
honest to
badge.
be a politician. This is obviously I'm not cut out for this job. But I mean, I ran in a riding that was my old neighborhood in Vancouver, East Van, which is a very, very leftist area, and possibly the most leftist riding in all of Canada. It's been an NDP stronghold for decades. The NDP is even left of the Liberal Party. It's our very, very leftist party. And
Riding.
So I ran.
Riding.
I'm sorry, electoral district. Sorry,
we have to explain
Americans
to our
don't
American
understand my
audience,
beans, my process, and my ridings.
Yeah.
But now, so wait a second. You're saying even left of the Liberal Party, but Chrystia Freeland is the Liberal Party, right?
Yep.
And she's the one whose grandfather was a Nazi propagandist or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
I don't know that much about her, but this sounds about right. Yeah.
She is, and then she's the one that said that Canada has to join with France and Germany because they have nuclear weapons against the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the Liberals have taken this really anti-American position, which has actually benefited them a lot because Canadians have been so propagandized that they also believe that their mortal enemy is America and Trump and Tesla, apparently, which is insane because it's their government that's the enemy. Their government is the government that took away their rights and is, punishing dissent. And if the Liberal Party gets in again, they've been working to pass this bill C-63, which is purportedly, aimed at cracking down on online hate speech. So that means that people will be put through human rights tribunals and fined and potentially jailed for saying politically incorrect things on Facebook. For example, they're a very, very authoritarian government. Those mandates weren't going away until the convoy came along. Those mandates would have been indefinite if the convoy didn't force them to stop. But and after all that happened, the Canadians still don't see it, and they're like, "Oh, Trump's ruining our economy." It's like, the Liberal Party ruined the Canadian economy over the past 10 years. It wasn't Trump who's been in power since January.
So are Canadians now going to destroy their country just to get back at Trump? You think that might happen?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I still sort of think that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party will win the election. I think that I don't trust the polls that show that the Liberal Party is tied essentially with the CPC, but you never know. And I wouldn't put it past Canadians to vote the Liberal Party back into power. And it's frankly depressing. I've sort of tried to avoid complete cynicism about Canada, especially because I'm running in the election. But it's hard when people are so easily distracted by, again, this kind of propaganda and these shiny objects. Like, look over here. Okay, we'll look over here. And we're going to re-elect the same party that destroyed the country over the past 10 years. Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's financial advisor for 5 years. He was very much part of the reason that the economy in Vancouver or in Canada is so bad. You know, people can't afford groceries, they can't afford gas, they can't afford to buy homes. Inflation is just psychotic because they were printing money like crazy during COVID. That's the fault of the Liberal Party of Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney. And apparently so many Canadians are seeing Mark Carney as something new and different, and he's not new and different. And in fact, I think he's worse than Trudeau. You know, he's an elitist and a globalist. He's a banker, you know. He doesn't even think of himself as a politician. He refuses to answer questions from the media. You know, he doesn't think he's accountable to the people in any way whatsoever.
So the red line here represents the Liberal Party, and you see that at the top when Trudeau resigns and how they got a lot more popular at that point.
Yeah.
So is it more about Trudeau resigning, or it's more about getting back at Trump, or a little bit of both? I mean, when we say get back at Trump, I guess people are pissed off about the tariffs and the 51st state thing. Do people take that seriously in Canada?
Yeah, I think they took it seriously, which is silly. I think they want to take it seriously, to be honest. This is going to sound insulting, but I guess lots of things I've said already have sounded insulting, so we might as well roll with it.
What do you care? You're not going anywhere. You're the candidate who doesn't care.
I know. Why am I pretending like I care about insulting people?
Let it rip, baby. Let it rip.
I think that Canadians were really excited to be relevant and to pretend that they were, you know, fighting the good fight against the big bad guy, because usually Canada is irrelevant and Americans don't really think about Canada very much. Right. And they're not seen as strong. They're seen as passive and kind of like cute and silly and like, oh, silly Canada over there. Who cares about them? So they've sort of reveled in this opportunity to pretend that they're at war with the big bad Trump, and they haven't thought this through at all. So the Liberals just took an opportunity, I guess, that was presented to them when Trudeau said he was going to resign in January. He didn't actually resign. He said, I plan to resign once we elect a new leader for the party. Prorogued Parliament. So he froze Parliament so that he couldn't get kicked out of government, because that's what was coming. A vote of non-confidence was coming, which would have forced his resignation and election.
He can freeze the Parliament.
Yeah. So he managed to postpone all that for almost 3 months. So Parliament was frozen. In the meantime, they implemented, they put Mark Carney in the position of as leader through what I don't believe is a democratic process at all. And created and stirred up all this propaganda and fear mongering around Trump's tariff threats, which they framed as an attack on Canada and an attack on the economy, which of course it was not. Trump is trying to help America. That's his job as president. He's trying to improve the economy. He's trying to get a better deal for America. This isn't about an attack on Canada. They pretended as though this annexing of Canada threat was real, which I don't think it was. I think he's just trolling. I mean, why would you guys want a whole bunch of socialists in your country? But it would be like an unwise plan for America.
These people wouldn't actually vote for Trump.
I mean, I thought, I was like, Canada should be so lucky to become a part of America. You guys would all get to use US dollars and you'd have more rights and freedoms, but Canadians don't see things that way. So yeah, their propaganda worked, and they managed to regain the popularity that they lost all those years with Trudeau. I mean, the Liberal Party was dead in the water as of January. It was over for them. And I can't believe that they've tricked Canadians into getting back on board.
All right, can we get back to the adult human female thing? What's up with that? I love that. That's so provocative, and I think I know what's behind it, but tell us anyway.
Well, I mean, Canada has gone hard on the gender identity ideology thing. So no party in Canada, except for the People's Party of Canada, seems to know what a woman is anymore. A man can be a woman. Trans women, i.e. men, are women, so on and so forth. And particularly in this riding, the Vancouver East riding that I'm talking about, is jam-packed with wokes and trans activists. I left Vancouver and Canada in January 21, in large part because I just didn't feel safe in my neighborhood anymore. This is a neighborhood that I lived in for many, many years. Yeah, I live in Mexico. I feel safe.
You want to say what part?
I'm in Sayulita, which is about an hour from Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, yeah, I know. Puerto
No, I mean the
Vallarta.
exact address. We're coming over.
You'll
We'll bring
never
a nice-
find it. It's way too confusing.
No, no.
We'll bring a
The
nice
addresses here don't
Cabernet or
make a lot of
something,
sense.
don't
My family's all from Mexico, so I'd probably find it. So.
I love Mexico.
Is it anywhere near Puerto Escondido by any chance?
Not that near,
No.
but
The
not
reason
as
I ask
far
is
as like Cancun.
Ryan's in Austin, as he said, and I just visited him recently. And I met a very nice woman at a restaurant there who, like you, is an expat who went to live in Mexico for a while, but now she's back in Austin. And that's where she was, Puerto Escondido. And I never, I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'm not, I like it, but I'm not in love with it. I'm sort of like thinking about maybe where would I like, what would I like better? And I never thought about Mexico. But between what she said and you being in Mexico, now I'm thinking about Mexico. So what's it like there?
Well, I mean, people always say, they're like, maybe I should move to Mexico. And I'm like, maybe you should visit first. I mean, it's pretty like different. It's not like being on vacation. Like, I think people think, oh, you moved to Mexico. You're sitting on the beach drinking margaritas. I'm like, no, that's not. I'm still working. Like, I'm still like living my life here. But, I think, to live here, you have to be comfortable with a certain level of like unpredictability and chaos and roosters and dogs and
I know
the power goes out and you have unreliable internet sometimes and so on and so forth. I love it. Like, and I like the chaos of it all, and I like the craziness, and I love Mexicans. I love Mexican culture.
Can you get good food?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes,
of course.
I don't want to sit on the beach drinking margaritas. I want to just have good wine. I mean, I assume you can get wine there, right?
I don't have access to good wine. No, I have access to wine, but it's not. You don't have like the same. It's not. And that's not to say there is actually really good Mexican wine. It's just not where I am. Like, you can get good Mexican wine in like San Miguel Allende
sometimes
or
you
Mexico
get wine.
City.
The wine that Ryan and I drink sometimes is, pertains to whomever the guest is or what the topic is. I actually tried to get Mexican wine for this in honor of you, Megan.
Oh, thank you.
But there's nothing in stock in my local shops. They could have ordered it, but it wouldn't have come in until later. But
what I like to drink here is called Raicilla, and you may recognize that from when I tried to make Joe Rogan drink it, and he told me that it tasted like gasoline. But I love it. It's like the local moonshine, essentially. It's the agave spirit of the state of Nayarit, and. A lot of people even here think that I'm crazy because I like it so much, and I really do. I like it better than tequila and mezcal.
Up in Sonora, where my family's from, they drink Vacanora, which is their version of the hooch, like what you're talking about also. Similar things.
So it has a high alcohol content?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You're a fun girl.
Thank you.
Are
yeah. I think so.
Well, in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by a couple of our friends and a special guest, and I think that you have something in common with at least a couple of them. One is Jose Vega, who ran for Congress in the Bronx in the last congressional election, and he's running again. And the other we just got.
Hold on.
Hold on. Dennis Kucinich will be joining us also.
Oh, great.
I'm sure you know who Dennis is. And he ran, after having much success as a congressman, he ran on an independent third-party ticket, but didn't win in the last election.
In Ohio.
All right, so why do you want me to hold on, Ryan?
No, I was going to say something. You jumped in, so that's cool. We're good.
All right.
I thought Jose had joined with us, but
okay.
That's
yourself,
okay.
Ryan. This is a professional podcast. We want to give Megan the right impression.
Super professional.
All right. Speaking of being professional, we want to help you too, Megan. You're still raising funds, even though you're not.
Oh yes, please donate to my campaign. The problem is that Americans can't donate, so it might not be very helpful to announce.
No, but there are a lot of Canadians who are watching the show.
Oh yeah,
we're still raising funds.
Yeah, some of them said they already voted for you.
Thank you. I almost choked.
In fact, I put a link. Here it is. It's kind of a long URL. It's hard to memorize it, but I put it in the as a link under the descriptions on our various platforms.
Awesome.
So there you go. Yeah, we actually do have some regular Canadian fans, and one of them, Megan, weighed in. And one of them is a legal expert. You wouldn't think that the Whiners have legal counsel, but one of them weighed in with an analysis of your situation. I don't know if you're going to appreciate this exactly, because I think you suspect it's the government, but he has a different take on it. I'll flash, I don't know if we have any speed readers here, but let me give you the short version of it. He says it's absolutely illegal for the government to freeze your bank account without a court order. And he's saying you should check whatever mailing addresses they might have for you to see if you got notice of that. And he thinks that what might have happened is the person you spoke with at the union, is it a credit union, I guess, might have not given you the correct information. Now, I think I heard you on another podcast saying you do have a lawyer, or you don't.
I have talked to a lawyer, but it's hard to move forward because I don't actually have any information about why my account was frozen. So the people at Van City wouldn't tell me specifically why my account was frozen. They just told me that they got a fax from the government, and they wouldn't show me the fax or send me anything in writing confirming this. And then when I called the government over and over and over again, nobody would return my calls or respond or tell me what was going on either. So I'm sort of still in the dark.
Does that present a constitutional type crisis or some high level crisis?
I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, it should be illegal to freeze people's bank accounts. I mean, I had already begun moving all of my finances and income over to an American bank account a couple of years ago because I saw what the Canadian government was doing. And I was like, I'm not going to be vulnerable to or dependent on this government. And I certainly don't want to pay taxes. So I haven't really made any income of note in Canada in years. I still use the bank account a little bit because I have a residence in Vancouver. So it's like I pay my rent through that account, and I pay my truck insurance through that account, and there's certain bills. So it is an impediment, but it didn't leave me without access to money. And again, most of my income was going through my US bank account already, but the government doesn't know that. So for all they know, they froze my bank account, refused to return my calls or tell me why, and I just didn't have access to any money at all. I mean, it's sick. Like what if I had a health emergency? You know what I mean? Like you can't buy
that's
food.
A scary thing.
Like it's like a death sentence. Like it's insane.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people live hand to mouth. And if that was what you would depend on to pay your rent and pay everything, then
which most people
and other people
I would think
are in that boat. Anyway, to answer your question, Ryan, that is what our anonymous secret legal expert said. It is a violation of the Constitution if the government did it without a court order. And that's why he's advising you to check whatever mailing addresses.
I mean, I don't know legal or not legal, but Van City was like, it's just our policy that if the government sends us this notification to freeze someone's bank account, they do. So I don't know if Van City would defend it on a legal basis. They just say, this is what we do. Like maybe they actually have a choice whether to do it or not, but they decided to comply.
Right.
And I know that you're kind of ambivalent about it from watching you on other podcasts because you're like, well, whatever, if that's what they're going to be, then they don't get Megan Murphy to be a resident of Canada anymore.
Yeah, like fine, then I don't want anything to do with you either. I don't take rejection well. No, joking.
Wow. Jose Vega, 0-backup. That looks really good.
Thank you. I do that on purpose so I don't take myself too seriously. Hi.
So I want to introduce you to Megan Murphy. Megan's running on the People's Party of Canada ticket for the Canadian Parliament. They have 340 ridings. I bet you didn't know that, Jose.
That's right.
Districts in Canada. And Jose ran for Congress in the Bronx and is going to do it again. Megan, Jose? Jose, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Mucho gusto.
All right. Yeah.
Don't ask me to say any other Spanish words.
That's what I was wondering. You live in Mexico, and
do you speak
Spanish?
Don't need
to speak Spanish?
Oh, I wouldn't say that I speak Spanish. I would say that I know how to say some things in Spanish. For example, una copa de vino tinto, por favor, uno más.
All right.
So it's like me. I took Spanish in school, and I can say what I need to say for a Spanish-speaking person to understand me.
Yeah, I
you
can't
don't
understand when people respond is the
Yeah,
problem. Like I'll say something
yeah.
and then they'll respond to me and I'll be like,
A lot of sign language then,
okay.
right?
Donde está el baño?
You're not taking any lessons?
No,
Language
I don't
lessons?
really have a lot of spare time, to be honest. I would like it's sad because I love Spanish actually, like, and it's an impediment, but I also just love the language. I think it's beautiful, and I wish that I could speak Espanol, but it takes a lot more work and time than I thought it would. I sort of thought when I moved here I would like pick it up, but that's not how it works. You have to work pretty hard at it, and I have another more than full-time job.
Well, let me ask you about a war issue, because that's the topic we're going to discuss with Dennis Kucinich. And I'm just wondering, I was looking at the platform of the People's Party of Canada.
I'm not a war expert, but ask away.
Yeah, well, you don't necessarily have to be an expert, but is it one? Do you take any position on, like, say, the Russia, Ukraine? Especially, it's in the news now where Pierre, how do you pronounce his last name?
Polyev.
He is saying that they want to take the frozen Russian assets, and redirect it to Ukraine. Are you aware of that, and do you have a position on that?
No, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on this, but my position is that we should stop funding the war and stop sending money to Ukraine. I think it's a huge, 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 gross waste of money. So, I'm not going to get too deep into it though, because it's just not my area.
Right.
But you're focusing on the censorship.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is I'm opposed to gender identity ideology. I've been fighting gender identity ideology in Canada for longer than almost anybody. So I testified against the gender identity legislation, the bill at the time, which was Bill C-16 in 2017, and I'd been trying to raise the alarm about this whole thing prior to that, which was extremely difficult because I essentially got blacklisted by the Canadian media as soon as I began speaking about this, and censored and protested and platformed everywhere that I went, and ever since. So yeah, I've just been trying to fight for women's sex-based rights and women's spaces, and against this nonsense where men get to identify legally as women whenever they feel like it.
Well, this is a great forum to be talking about it all. We have 3 candidates on, Megan Murphy running out in Canada, and then we have Congressman Kucinich, who just joined us, who
Welcome.
Also ran as an independent in Ohio in the last election cycle in 2024 here in the United States, also former presidential candidate. And I'm really happy you can join us today, Congressman.
It's good to join you, and I'm, thanks for the invite.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Now,
let's
when
not
we-
forget, Morgan is also here. Morgan is sort of a string puller, and also a
She's not yet a
co-host here
candidate,
as well.
though. That's coming
But
maybe
she's
next.
not a candidate.
Yeah.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here with you guys. I'm
Now,
quiet,
Dennis, I
like
don't
a
know if
little
you-
mouse behind the scenes, but
Dennis, I don't know if you remember when Scott Ritter and I interviewed you last year. We were trying to make a little argument that the population should be held accountable, whereas you tend to blame things on the media. But you wouldn't bite. You refused to hold the voters accountable. Megan Murphy is different. Are you familiar with Megan, first of all?
I am now.
Oh, you are now? Okay.
Okay.
So she's running for the Canadian Parliament on the People's Party of Canada, which is, to say it in a neutral way, I guess a minor party, a third party. That's what we call it here.
We're
And she
new.
just-
We're
yeah.
growing.
The
And
People's
she
Party.
holds the public accountable. She says they're a bunch of idiots, and furthermore, she flat out admits she doesn't expect to win. Now, is that refreshing?
It's impossible for me to win. It's impossible. It's an NDP stronghold. They win by a landslide every election, and they have been forever. There's very few people in that riding who are going to vote for somebody like me. I did it, just so that there's a name on the ballot that people who believe that men aren't women and who care about free speech and civil liberties and things like that have somebody to vote for, because this is how I felt when the People's Party of Canada came along. I stopped voting in Canada in 2015 because I didn't support any of the parties. None of them represented me. And I was so angry that no one would engage me on this issue of, again, women's sex-based rights, women's spaces, this nonsense with allowing men into women's prisons and transition houses and shelters and change rooms. And I was like, well, screw, I'm not voting for a party that pretends not to know what a woman is. That's like voting against myself. And then the People's Party of Canada came along, and I was just relieved that I could vote for somebody that I actually felt represented my interests. So that's a big part of the reason why I ran. And also just to like troll my old neighborhood so that they have to be like triggered by seeing my name on the ballot and my face on people's lawns and things like that. That seemed fun to me.
Dennis, what do you think of her direction, saying that the American, or the voters, rather, the Canadian people need to be held accountable?
Just to be clear, I blame the politicians too, and I blame the media too. But if people are going to keep voting against themselves, I'm going to have to ask some questions about how awake they are to what's happening.
Yeah, it's called representative government, and for everything that means. I'm always reluctant to blame people because people have a right to make their choices. They choose and then they choose again. So it's good that people are looking for openings where it would appear that none may exist at the moment. You talked about the NDP winning very big in an area, but things happen, and the public occasionally is going to look at the circumstances and say, well, maybe I want to try something different. That does happen. And I never, having run as an independent, I was elected mayor of the city of Cleveland, having defeated both political parties. And I ran as an independent for Congress. The first time I did that, I just missed by about 1.5 points.
Wow.
And I understand why people run as independents. And I did that the last time because I oppose the Democratic Party's support for war. That's not who I am. And so we have to be consistent. And, Megan's speaking about consistency with what she believes in. We have to be consistent. And I didn't see the party representing me. And, I just decided, okay, I'm going to run as an independent. And I didn't make it, but as it turned out, I was able to receive more votes than any independent candidate for the House in the entire country, which, is a start. But in the States, 2024 is a very polarized election.
Yep.
So what are you going to do? It's
Right.
people were voting without even knowing the candidates. They'd vote D or R. That was it. I hadn't seen it that polarized in a long, I can't say that I ever saw it that polarized before.
Yeah. Now, I'll take Megan's word for it that she has no chance. But in your case, Dennis, I actually was surprised you didn't win because, like you said, you've been an independent winning candidate previously, and you served in Congress. So I don't know, but
but it's very polarized.
Yeah,
Jeff,
that's the difference.
and greatly polarized. And and again, people didn't really know. We knew from polling that people didn't know the incumbent Republican or the Democratic candidate. Didn't matter. They voted for a label. That's what happened. But to get back to the insufficiency of partisan politics in today's world, that's pretty much established. You have to look at, in the States, the failure of both parties to offer real alternatives to people. And we've had the homogenization of our politics, and money has changed it all. The Citizens United, the Buckley versus Vallejo decisions, which said corporations are people, that they have the same rights, that they have free speech, money equals free speech. That went further in wiping out the differences between the two parties because they both rely on pretty much the same sources.
Well,
is that an issue in Canada, Megan, too, in a comparable way, that the money just dominates the whole situation too much?
I mean, of course, money dominates the situation a lot. If you have more funding, you have more ability to get out there and get your candidates supported and win. Like a big part of the problem in Canada is that most of our media is government funded media. So if you want to talk about, who to blame, it's like blame the media, but like the vast majority of our very small media landscape is funded by the government in power, which is the liberal government. So anybody who's working for and involved in the media in any way at all is going to vote liberal. They toed the Liberal Party line. They're opposed to, permanently, no matter what, opposed to the Conservative Party in Poilievre, certainly to the People's Party of Canada. Anybody who challenges or threatens their funding, which Poilievre has, he's promised to actually defund the CBC, our national broadcaster. So there's that, and then that combined with the fact that I think that like almost half of our population now are government employees, so they're obviously going to vote in their own favor for this government too. So it's, it's similar but slightly different landscape. I mean, America has a lot more diversity in terms of their media than we do.
Ryan? I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to
Jump in, Jose.
The article.
Because we have Dennis and
but actually, I wanted
Megan only until the top.
I just wanted to make a quick
statement.
Yeah.
We have Dennis and Megan only until the top of the hour, so wanted to make sure we get a chance to discuss this very interesting Substack post that Dennis wrote. I think it was published just yesterday, and people, to some extent, are very aware of the devastation being caused in Gaza, but maybe not so aware about how it affects Israelis and whatever military personnel might be in the area from other countries as well. What put this on your radar, Dennis? And it's a really good point.
Well, first of all, I'm opposed to war, period. And every justification since World War II that has been used for war has been based on lies. That's number one. So, and I can't be rolled. I can't be spun. I led the effort in the U.S. Congress against the war in the Balkans, against the war in Iraq, against the war against Libya, against continuing the war in Afghanistan, against what we were doing in Syria, on and on and on. I just see war as a racket. I'm not the first one who said that, but it's a racket. Then I looked at what's actually happening now in Gaza. We have to come up with a new word that goes beyond horror, because the language that we have right now doesn't adequately describe what the people of Gaza are going through under this extraordinary bombardment of the Israeli, the IDF, with U.S. supplied armaments, U.S. supplied bombs. It is horrific. So, I've been thinking about this. I wrote a piece before that a few days earlier called "The Cross and the Pieta," which was about the emotional and spiritual impact of the war being visited upon Gazans, and in the context of Mary, Mother of Jesus, holding her slain son in her arms, Michelangelo's famous sculpture, the Pieta. But then this piece, I started to think about, wait a minute, there's a metaphysics here that are expressed in the environment. Israel, adjacent to Gaza, is involved in this unrelenting bombing of Gazans. But and the people literally are being reduced to dust. Right. They're being vaporized. I describe that quite graphically, but I do it in a way that's forensic, so it's kind of scientifically. And people need to understand that the consequences of war go beyond the boundaries of where the war is. And so, in this case, Israel is actually breathing in the fallout of the war that they're visiting upon the people of Gaza. And I go into great detail about that, but it's not only about Israel, it's about Jordan. It's not only about breath, it's about the land, it's about the food. It's about the air that circulates not only in the region, but, the smoke and all the things in it carried aloft can go hundreds, even thousands of miles. And Jeff, and Morgan, I wrote that as a lead-in to the next piece I'm going to write, which is about this crazy, I mean, absolutely depraved plan to bomb Iran, which has over a dozen nuclear structures, research, reactors, on and on.
Well, that
Was
was
this
the
even-
thing,
is this
Dennis,
even
that
an
came into
issue?
my mind actually when you said that the people they would be breathing in the fallout of the people that they vaporized. My first thought was Iran. If there's an attack, a nuclear attack on Iran, then all of that fallout will also spread all around Israel and all of the neighborhood as well.
The wind will go in kind of a circular area, and it can go into the Middle East. Absolutely. You can also go into Afghanistan,
Europe.
Pakistan, India. Okay.
Well, that's somewhat known about nuclear weapons, but I don't know that the people are aware with conventional bombs about this dust that you were talking about. Is this even an issue in Israel? Is anybody talking about it?
Well, no, but see, here's the thing. I wrote this because there are no consequence-free wars for either, for certainly the victims and for those aggressed upon and those who are doing the aggression. And I'm sure this is something that hasn't been thought about, and I'm sure the Israeli government is not sharing information related to what has to be elevated levels of toxicities in the air, particularly adjacent to Gaza. It's just, look, I lived near steel mills when I was growing up, and just within a mile or so, and the dust was on our sill. You could inhale sulfur dioxide from a nearby private utility. It was burning coal. We've all had experiences like that. Now think about 100,000 tons of bombs in this small area about the size of Detroit. It's extraordinary. I ran some calculations in a previous article, The Cross and the Pieta, where we have visited, I say we because the West, America and Israel together, have visited upon the people of Gaza the equivalent of about 2,500 9/11s with population adjusted figures. And I mean, this is immoral on a level that it's almost hard to articulate. We need a new language that goes even beyond genocide. It's like all the familiar reference points that we use to express how we feel and the horror are failing us. People are having trouble being able to describe what they see. And if any of us have had the chance to actually receive the videos from people in Gaza, or to go to something like Instagram and pull down some of the videos that are being posted by Gazans, it is mind-blowing. And if it doesn't touch one's heart, you don't have a heart. And try to get one. I wrote it. I'm going to keep writing about this. I have been.
Yeah, I mean, people should care about the victims, but if they don't, maybe the perpetrators will care about what it's doing to them. Have you thought about how to wake them up in Israel about this? I mean, we have a worldwide audience, but I don't know that we have any. I can't remember anybody from Israel commenting.
Well, let me just say that first of all, I'm reducing the article. I'm putting it together in another form, and I'll be delivering it personally to the various states that might have an interest at the UN, where I've over the years spent some time, and so that's the beginning. Yes,
Jose.
Congress, I don't know what's with my connection. It's bad, and I sent the message to Morgan to read in case you can't hear more of me. I just wanted to say to you, Congressman, that I think you are one of the only independents left out of a generation of people that could be proud to call themselves progressives. And I think now with this, we're in with the passing of Pope John, and we need a reminder of the encyclical that was the Pace Terra, was the encyclical that was passed after the Cuban Missile. And I'm hoping that instead of us talking about the problem, which we all know and detailed very well in the article, if you could tell me more about trying to fight for that
Yeah, it's the, I mean, and I'm familiar with the
Yeah, and freeing up.
Pachman Terrace. It's very important to me as a matter of spiritual guidance and an ethical position. This doesn't get much more complicated than "Thou shalt not kill." It is as simple as love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There are spiritual teachings that underpin our lives, and all of those familiar signposts are being ripped down by a culture, by a political culture that is basically bought and sold for by interest groups. And so the question isn't who they are, it's who are we? That's the question every one of us asks ourselves every day. Who are we? And so who I am, I took a stand for peace as a member of Congress. I'm doing it now. I'm not in Congress. And every one of us, from whatever vantage point we have, we need to get the message out and demand that there be an end to this genocide, and that we use the example of the suffering of the people of Gaza as a reason that we need to get rid of war itself. It really is. We're at that point in human history where we have such destructive power, we can destroy the world, and those who become enamored of that destructive power are, can become psychopathic.
Well, Dennis, you also had said on X, you had called on Doge to continue to go after the corruption and inefficiency, especially on this question of wars of choice, right, which has cost $8 trillion. And, earlier before you came on, Megan was talking about how the new prime minister Mark Carney, right? In Canada is a banker. And so how can you trust him? Now you're saying, hey, Doge, why don't you go after all this money? So, there is a historical tradition, speaking of Canada and the United States, of building things. Back in the Kennedy days, there were plans on the books for water projects between the two countries, a completely different way to spend money as opposed to either war or speculation, derivatives, these things, as you say, wars of choice that just kill people.
Well, the whole northeast part of the country, of the U.S., is dependent on hydroelectric power from Canada. When I was mayor of Cleveland, I was dealing with Hydro-Quebec. And so, what's interesting now, and Megan, you may, have a comment on this. What's interesting now, even though you have Mark Carney, who's a banker, and, bankers generally are going to protect their own interests, what we're finding now is that the chaotic way in which the U.S. economy is being managed, that even bankers are saying, whoa, wait a minute, this is not a way to keep an economy together. And I built a reputation as mayor of Cleveland in taking on the banks and in putting in Congress legislation that would put the Fed as a bureau under the Treasury and take away that sovereign power that was given to the Fed in 1913, which really belongs to the people by our Constitution. Still, I would say that we might be in a time when people like Mr. Carney in Canada could end up understanding the dangers to not just Canada and North America, but to the world, that this yo-yo effect in the economy of, one day something said and the yo-yo goes down, the next day you bring it up and the market dances up and down like a yo-yo. Hey, you know what? That instability has a knock-on effect. It does nothing to lower prices. It creates more chaos. And I'm not a friend of the financial community. I led the effort in investigating the subprime meltdown in 2007, 2008, 2009. But right now, business leaders themselves are concerned about the direction the country is being taken. So, Megan, what about Canada? I mean, is
Well, Mark Carney destroyed the Canadian economy, so I don't think he's going to be the one to fix it. He was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor for 5 years, and they are in so much debt that they're never going to be able to dig themselves out, and have created an inflation problem so bad that people can't afford to buy groceries or gas or houses by printing money during COVID. And, he's a nightmare elitist globalist who doesn't think that he's accountable to the people in any way whatsoever. So I think he'll be a major disaster for the economy and for freedom, and he'll move towards, a digital currency that they'll freeze for people who are political dissidents. So I don't think he's the solution, but I have to go.
Oh, okay, Megan.
I'm really sorry.
No, that's right. And I think Dennis might have to go too. But before you do go, let's remind folks that you can donate to Megan. That's her Substack.
The campaign. It doesn't go directly to me, but we'd love campaign support for, signs, flyers, expenses, things like that.
And that's
that would
her
be
email
awesome.
address there. And Dennis, do you have a prediction or who you're rooting for in the election in Canada? Mark Carney and the Liberals, or Pierre Poilievre?
First of all, my grandmother on my mom's side was from London, Ontario. So, there's a Canadian connection. I don't, I try to stay out of politics in other countries. It's enough to look at the politics in our own country, but good luck. But I would like to say that if people want to go to my Substack, they can just, you can get a free subscription if you'd like. But I'm publishing every week about this subject, about matters of war and peace and the ethical nature of it. And, it really goes deeper about what it means to be human. Who are we as people? And how in the world, in any world, can we permit this kind of slaughter to go on, and not try to do something about it? So anyone who's watching, I give in the column previous to the one about breathing in war, I give a list of things that you might be able to do in your community to raise awareness and to protest what's going on. But I'll tell you, as far as America, we must change the direction of this country. We must stop becoming a tool for the military-industrial complex and it's all about war. And if we don't stop soon, we'll be undone. And so I'm continuing, and I appreciate Morgan. Thank you for getting a hold of me and making it possible for me to join you for even a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Sure.
Megan, Dennis, thank you both very much
we'd love
for
to
coming
continue,
on.
but we want to be respectful of your time. We knew from the beginning you had to go at the top of the hour. So thank
sorry.
you, Megan.
Thanks
Thank you,
so much for
Dennis.
having
Thank you,
me.
Dennis.
I appreciate it. It was good to meet you all. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
both.
Bye-bye. Love you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dennis.
Bye.
Wow, good group, huh? Good discussion.
Now we're stuck with this Morgan and Jose.
All right, Morgan, tell us. What's the scoop? People want to hear from you
Actually,
too.
you'll be stuck with just Morgan. I actually had a time limit too, till 8.
Oh, you
I
did?
have
Okay.
another-
Okay.
I will be watching. All right.
Donate to
Thank you.
Jose at votevega.nyc, and hopefully he'll allocate some of that for a better internet connection.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, he didn't hear that.
He didn't appreciate
that. Was the
comment.
bad internet connection.
I think it came at a bad time. I don't think he normally has bad internet connection.
Yeah, he seemed like he was in a different place, different location.
But this article was very interesting. I know we didn't really get to touch more into it, but it had it kind of circled back to other elements that have happened in the past where true ailments have come into play. It talked about the Persian War, the Gulf War sickness, and then also talked about stuff that happened in 9/11, those who were exposed to the soot would later experience.
Yeah, that was a big deal when those buildings came down and the whole island of Manhattan was like covered in, would you call it dust, soot? I don't know what the word is.
It's just things that kind of combust. It turns into carbon. That's essentially what soot is.
And that caused a lot of long-term health issues.
Morgan, that's your chemistry background.
I guess you're right. Yeah. But that had me thinking. Tucker Carlson had recently interviewed Kurt Weldon, who was a former representative from Pennsylvania, who was basically trying to ask legitimate questions on the narrative of 9/11. wanted to have at least, if we had Dennis on for longer, I wanted to get maybe some of his input, because they would have been serving around the same time. If maybe they joined together, or what was their kind of situation like, because I would assume they were kind of leaning on each other's side of kind of questioning the record of events that are being told to us. So I wanted to kind of play some videos of this interview that Tucker Carlson did and kind of get your guys' input on what this guy had experienced. To go further into it, it's not in the video clips, but I think it's needs mentioning. When he was officially questioning, it was an election year, and 3 weeks before the election, the FBI would raid his daughter's house, and that ultimately, it was played on every news channel, and everyone, it ultimately gave the election over to this other man who didn't even live in the state, and so he was kicked out of his seat. And he said that his political career had been, seriously hampered. His daughter, her whole career was ended after this, and she was never even charged with a crime. So it just shows you the lengths of what they go to if you show some kind of dissent and you hold some semblance of power. So I'll go ahead and I'll play the first video, which goes into what these intel agencies' game is.
The point is that the agency plays games with Congress. The Congress thinks it's getting good information, and it's not.
Yes.
The agency wants members fighting with each other over stupid things so they can do what they want. And it's not all. There are good people in the agencies
Yes.
that I worked with and I would go to war over. But there are some scumbags. I know those scumbags. At the appropriate time, I'll name those scumbags who have made millions and millions of dollars and are making millions and millions of dollars today. They're making it in Ukraine. They're making it around the world because of context they established. And all that ties back to their positions that they got, supposedly working intelligence for the U.S. That's not what this country's all about.
So he means the CIA? Is that the agency?
Well, there's different intelligence agencies. That's the main one.
Yeah.
But yes.
That's interesting because he was the vice chair of the Armed Services Committee, and then he also had something to do with U.S.-Russian relations. And if I'm not mistaken, when I was in his office in Congress, he had the thing that Reagan had announced, the Strategic Defense Initiative, as a huge picture in his office at the time. So I'm saying that because right there, he's already taking it to a much bigger standpoint, talking about the agencies. It's an international kind of problem that he's talking about. And then you're saying he's just swept aside.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens to a lot of principled men. I mean, we know the story with Dennis Kucinich. His seat was completely
Redistricted out.
Yeah, he redistricted out. He didn't even have a chance to fight for it. So that's kind of what we run into with these electoral politics. Even though kind of what Meghan Murphy was that Meghan Murphy was alluding to was it's the people's fault. But I don't think it's such a bigger gambit than that, to really kind of just chalk it up to, it's the people's fault. The people suck. I think, it's a larger game that's being played. It's how this Waldron's daughter was basically targeted three weeks before the election, and every news agency all got on board and made sure everyone knew their name, and it had tied to a scandal to it. I think
But that's happened many, many times. There was Abscam, there was Brylab, there was various things where the intelligence agencies of the United States created sting operations to clean out the Congress and the Senate of more constituent-connected politicians.
So this man's anger is so palpable.
Yeah.
It's hard not to notice it. I watched the whole interview right after it came out. I guess it was probably a couple of weeks ago at this point.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm curious, though, Morgan, regular viewers of this podcast and Ask the Inspector know that Scott and I have been at odds to some extent with the 9/11 truthers, as they call themselves, the people who have been screaming about, what they perceive as the truth for years. Are you a person who has followed that issue closely? And I mean, do you consider yourself a 9/11 truther or whatever term you want to use?
Well, I mean, that term is so funny. I mean, yeah, I would like to seek the truth. Then again, I was
No, I know, but I mean, this is what they call
Well,
themselves.
that's what they
The
call
ones
themselves.
the ones who are activists about, exposing what they consider to be the real story.
Well, I
Are
feel
you
like
one of
that's
those?
also an intel agency kind of game is the 9/11 truthers. A lot of them were being, oh, you're a 9/11 truther for just asking questions around at that same time.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Or you're a truth denier.
Yeah.
Some form of thing like that.
See, I think I've called these people 9/11 kooks before, and people get very upset with me. And Scott, reacts similarly, and then it always, provokes great anger from the audience. But let's try to have a little civil conversation about it, at least explain. I actually think I don't think this guy's a kook at all. I think his anger is righteous and he has a story to tell. But that doesn't mean that I agree with everything he says. And the thing about the 9/11 truthers is that many of them, in other words, the big picture is that, of course, we should expose everything and get to the bottom of it. But the problem is a lot of the 9/11 truthers have crazy theories, and they're very obnoxious about how they interact with people who don't necessarily agree with everything they say. And the big issue for me is what the New York City firefighters believe. The so-called truthers always go on and on about the engineers, what's the other experts, the demolition experts.
Demolition. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the Jews dancing on the van from Hoboken.
I've heard that as well. I
right.
think when you touch into, there is a lot of inconsistencies on that day. I was a baby. So every year around 9/11, we would have this discussion. I never even heard of Building 7 until I was in my 20s. So that just shows you the consolidation of information that they didn't want you to know. So I think when you touch into that, a lot of times you get freaked out, and you may go too far, or you may get a little hysterical in that. But I think there is legitimate grounds to be critical and ask questions.
Well, there is. And there was I guess they called it was sort of a petition of people who were prominent Americans calling for more of an investigation right from the very beginning, shortly after it happened. And I'm one of the signatories on that. And not only that, I helped get some more well-known, I mean, I'm a nobody, but I helped get some people who are well-known. I think Daniel Ellsberg, I think Ed Peck, the former ambassador to Iran, and maybe Mel Goodman, former CIA agent. I can't remember exactly who, but the point is, I'm sometimes perceived as a guy who's like hostile to this. But if you notice, everybody who has a reputation apart from 9/11 all pulled back. And no, it's not because everybody's afraid that something's going to happen to them. It's because the kooks took over. Now, let me just finish my point about the firefighters. The architects were the other experts. The architects, the engineers, and the demolition experts. This is what the 9/11 truthers always point to. But the New York City firefighters are also experts. They have a different kind of expertise. Their whole job is to go into very dangerous situations, risk their lives, and they need to know when to get the hell out of the building so they don't die.
Structural integrity.
So they have a certain type of expertise as well. And not only that, these particular experts were on the scene, whereas the engineers, the architects, and the demolition experts weren't. So yeah, we see that it looks like it was a controlled demolition. But here's what the 9/11 truthers never address, and I don't know if they even know about it, but they should know about it because they devote themselves to this issue. But there are transcripts that were published in the New York Times of the communications on the two-way radio between the New York City firefighters. And then there were also interviews afterwards. And they all said there was a big hole in the building. It was severely damaged when one of the towers, I think it was Tower 1, landed on it. And that's what degraded the structure to a great degree. And there was a huge hole in it. So when people talk about how, that had to be a controlled demolition because the internal structure of the building would have slowed the collapse, They're ignoring the fact that the New York City firefighters are saying that, no, there was no internal structure. There was a hole. It was gone. And not only that,
Right.
in all these transcripts that went on for hours, the firefighters are worried that the building's going to collapse. It goes on for
Right.
hours and hours. There's not just one or two, but like 30 or 40 communications between all different firefighters, high ranking, low ranking, and they're all worried that the building is going to collapse. So it's just a coincidence that there was a controlled demolition after all that? I don't think so.
Just for clarification, you're talking about the people that say controlled demolition to the World Trade Center is not Building 7?
Building 7 is what I'm talking about in particular.
Okay.
And what you just said, also for clarification, is that the firefighters saw Building 1 fall into it to create the hole.
That's what they say.
I mean,
So,
you
know,
had
if you
shown
disagree,
me
then
parts of
say
these
you disagree,
reports.
call them liars or whatever, but don't ignore what the firefighters say.
I mean, that's interesting. I mean, the video itself is very appalling. And the fact that I had not seen that until I was in my 20s scared me all the more. You know, it was something that it was 9/11 week every school year. And that was the thing that we knew.
Now, that doesn't mean that the government
video.
wasn't in on it or something. I would like to have that exposed.
Well-
That doesn't mean it wasn't terrible that this congressman wasn't allowed to testify at the hearing, and he wanted to testify, and various things like that. So I don't mean to use what I just said as a means to diminish the value of what he's saying at all. I'm just adding another layer to it.
Well, see, that's one thing that I think about, because sometimes getting into these weeds where you have, like what you've just described, Jeff, where somebody can't have a discussion because their response is, well, you just haven't researched it enough, right? For me, because I was around at that time and I was engaged in political work, we had been in touch with various other countries were trying to tell the United States intelligence that in the month of September, as early as August, maybe even June or July, trying to tell the U.S. government that a terrorist attack was going to hit the United States somewhere in that period of time. So September wasn't, that was a time when they said that was going to happen. So we were busy going to Congress, getting out intelligence briefings from these other countries, trying to explain this. So I remember explicitly when the act happened, we had a crowd of people around us saying, "How did you know?" And we didn't know anything. I didn't know anything, and people
Look, all
wanted
these
to know
people
me
say
to-
they disagree with me and I got things wrong, but what did I get wrong? I'm telling you what the firefighters reported. You mean I'm wrong that they didn't say that? That's what. No, I'm not wrong. I can show you the transcripts.
Well,
I can
you might
show
need
the
you might need to do that. What the point I was making was this idea that there was probably something from within the government that allowed it to happen. What the specifics were, the policy that came out of it has changed the course of history to the present day.
Yeah, and the Patriot Act was written.
Is there
before
anybody
that.
who says I'm wrong who wants to call up and explain what I got wrong instead of just announcing I'm wrong? How about
So
that?
I will be.
The number
I will,
is. Let me
I
just
will
give
be
the
on
number
their
5.
side in the sense that I feel like it was coming in way too hot with the 9/11 truthers. I think that term it seems like a big psyop to kind of not even allow room for discussion on what really transpired that day, to shut people down and make people feel like, oh, they're the tinfoil hat crazies, when I feel like there something, and I will give it to you, there are some people that do take it too far, but we still don't have a full clear.
The PSYOP would not account for like why people like Scott Ritter don't buy it. You know, all these great analysts who risk their lives in various ways, and you can't say they're afraid. And the whole idea that the New York City firefighters are shrinking violence is absurd. New Yorkers in general aren't shrinking violence, and especially New York City firefighters whose relatives and coworkers got killed that day. They're going to be scared that something's going to happen to them.
I'm saying that it's a psyop using the term 9/11 truther. I think that was it.
That's what they call themselves, Morgan.
No, I think
Yeah.
that was generated first in the media, where there was like,
No,
oh, you're.
no. But if you want,
I mean, I
I'll
was
call
a
them whatever
baby,
you want.
so-
I'll call them whatever you
well-
want. I don't care. Tell me what you want, what term you want me to use. The
Well, I mean, I
people.
think I when you move, some people do go into hysterical rounds, but you do have people like this man who has, legitimate grounds to be like angered at just
I
simply
agree.
asking questions.
Well,
in a
but he's
position
at
of
a different
power.
level, right? So he actually knows, and he's saying that the Congress was being lied to in that first clip that you showed. What about the second clip? Does he go into this more?
Yeah, let's take a look at
So-
another clip.
Why don't
We
we just
have-
take
I
a
have
look at this one here?
Two
I'll
more
just
clips.
pull.
I will go into the core truth, which kind of talks into him just summarizing what he feels, the events on 9/11. So let me just go ahead and play. That's about 1 minute and 30 seconds.
What do you think the core truth of 9/11, September 11th, 2001 is?
I don't, at this point in time, I have my own perceptions. I don't have something I can give 100%. I can't swear on, but what I'm seeing bothers me to the core of my body, that 9/11 did not happen because a group of hijackers got control of some planes. First of all, I have confirmed that 2 of the hijackers that were on one of the planes in New York were working for the CIA. They were on the CIA payroll. And that was confirmed to me by someone in writing from one of our agencies, and I have that letter. So 2 of the people involved were actually working for the CIA in one of the planes. I know that. And they lost control of them. And there were reprimands against those agency people after the fact. Second, I know the intelligence, they tried 3 times to transfer the information about information that could have prevented 9/11. That's fact.
To the Justice Department.
And I have the name of the person that at the Justice Department they contacted, and she was told to cancel the meetings. They couldn't have the meetings.
Who did that order come from? Who?
That's what needs to be investigated.
Okay.
And then we have John Crane, the Inspector General of the Pentagon, who went to the extent of issuing a request for whistleblower status because he was told to lie to the Congress and lie about pre-9/11 intelligence and able danger. And then we have General, the book by the General and his comments that he knew within seconds. None of this is in the 9/11 Commission report. The 9/11 Commission report is a piece of garbage.
So I don't think that sounds like hysterical or crazy. I think that
No,
sounds-
it doesn't.
Well, no,
It
no.
doesn't.
He says he's got the documents, so that's different.
Right.
He's
I said
got
at the beginning, this guy does not sound like a kook,
But you also have a trail of people who agree with him, and then I
Yeah.
feel like you have a trail of people who were probably aligned where he was at. Like this seems fishy, and weren't getting answers, so they leaned more into a radical, vision of it.
right?
And I can't fault people for that because we didn't provide them answers.
See, I'm not saying what I'm saying for the purpose of, hurting their credibility or hurting the credibility of those who want an investigation. I'm saying it for the purpose of explaining why this doesn't get more traction. And people who say I'm wrong still haven't explained why. They're going to say, Scott Ritter, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, was for years a firefighter. So he had a lot of expertise that's relevant to this, in addition to his weapons expertise. And he talked to the New York City firefighters. And the consensus among them is it was brought down by planes and fire. And now I know some people, I think one of the comments even said it, like a few firefighters said they heard explosions. Well, yeah, nobody denies that, but it doesn't mean that was a controlled demolition. It could have been transformers exploding or whatever. I don't know. I'm not pretending to know. I'm just telling you what the firefighters say. And if you want to be taken seriously, you got to address what they said. You don't have to agree with them, but don't ignore them.
Okay.
Well, it does seem that those firefighters are ignored. That's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say truthers because Morgan will get upset with me. By the 9/11 activists, by the people who devote themselves to addressing this issue.
But see, here's what's interesting. What the congressman there said is he doesn't buy the 9/11 Commission report either.
Yeah.
And Jeff, you and I some time ago actually talked about, I think you and I were looking at that report, and not everything that you're saying is even in that report.
Right.
So
right,
there
right.
are a number of people from different angles who say the official story is wrong. Yeah. What we do know is Cheney and these neocons took advantage of the circumstance to take the policy of the United States in a completely psychotic direction, which to this day we're still, hopefully unraveling under the
Get me
Trump
one,
administration.
T-Bone. Get me one. We had something scheduled once or twice, and they backed out.
That's
That
right.
would
You
be
and I tried.
interesting. I would say it's the cover up for me, or the concealing of like the little real reason, and then the actions that transpired beyond that that really get me. We have the Patriot Act, the never ending wars, the now we're looking for a war with Iran. It just seems too. I don't know.
Well, that's the neocon policy.
Yeah, but for me, it reminds me. Ben Shahn did a really great reporting on October 7th, where he talked about a lot of the people that were in the Knesset, or not the kibbutz, excuse me, were calling IDF soldiers, talking about they see Hamas, doing these drills. They're frightened that things are going to happen, and they were told
they were
to be
ignored.
quiet. They were actually told to be quiet.
Yeah.
And you have Egypt, who was alarming the bells as well, and it happened. And now we're seeing what has transpired after that is the complete demolition of Gaza, this open talking of expelling the people and controlling the land. And so it can be an organic event that happens, but you also have an entity that allows it to happen for bigger gain. That is, I don't find that out of the realm of possibility. And
in the same way, Zelensky, he campaigned that he was going to get peace with Russia, and everything that he has been a tool for creating a much larger war in Europe. So, I mean, and we know about the cookies being passed out at the Maidan by Victoria Nuland. We know about them picking out the different new government people. So what you just said is also not outside of the realm of possibility. And what some people in our chat are saying, yeah, exactly. This is
what I mean. I'm not entirely sure what this person means, but I think this might be the sort of obnoxiousness that I have in mind. Open your eyes. You see, there's a difference between opportunism and some crazy theory about what was planned in advance. Now, I think the Patriot Act and stuff like that was maybe the product of opportunism. Whether or not it was, that has nothing to do with whether or not it was a controlled demolition. If you want to have, an excuse for the Patriot Act, you could just, plant explosives in the building and admit they're explosives and not even, have planes crash and pretending. So, you're conflating different issues.
Well,
open your eyes. Tell me how my eyes are closed, and I'll consider opening them.
I would push back on the fact that they could just use some explosives. I mean, are you talking about like with human casualties? I think what really made the Patriot Act fly in, beautiful colors through Congress and Senate was because you had human casualties. You had a populace that was so
right. But what I'm saying is, you could have done that without trying to make it seem like plans and fire brought it down. You could have done that by just openly. Let's say, I don't believe it, but let's say it was controlled demolition. You could have done that by just using bombs and then saying, just openly saying they were bombs. And then that's the excuse for the Patriot Act. Instead, there is this incredibly complicated, convoluted theory that they have that makes no sense at all. Matt Taibbi wrote a great article about this, mocking how convoluted the theory is, and, bringing down plane in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania and all this. Like, why would they have even been confident that it would work to have planes go into the building and then never having done this before, and it would look like the planes brought it down, but it really was a controlled demolition. Who was it that would sit down and plan this out and be confident that would work? It's so far-fetched.
Well, I mean, it's also now when you get into far-fetched, you get me thinking about the people that say flat Earth, that it was all a huge thing. Going to the moon was a huge 50, what was it? It was $1 trillion scam to get you to believe the government, that none of it happened. So there is that kind of thing, lack of critical thinking, and then being so certain that you.
Here are some of the wacky things that people consider this as evidence. Somebody talked about
the building. Yeah, the guy who built the building.
Yeah, and somebody said like pull out or something. It was a phrase that's used in controlled demolitions. And probably the most ridiculous one I saw was the BBC, mistakenly reported maybe about a half an hour before Building 7 came down, that Building 7 had already come down. And the 9/11 truthers go, see, that proves it. That proves it. It's like, why would the people who were doing this, what you say they do, why would they feel the need to notify the BBC in advance anyway?
That is very interesting. That is a very interesting aspect. I have seen that, and I have seen I'm not sure. I
What, the
wasn't
BBC
there
thing?
that day. I've seen the video of that reporting where they were, basically saying Building 7 collapsed, and it's like right in the back screen of their
right.
green screen.
It's called the chaos of the day. But you see what I'm saying? In other words,
Oh, if there's a delay,
no, but why would, if their theory is true, why would the people who are doing this feel the need to tell the BBC about it? Like nobody would know about it unless they told the BBC? It's ridiculous. You see what I'm saying?
No,
Any
I don't.
answer
I
to
can
that,
make
someone?
arguments for both sides. I feel like. I mean,
No,
the side that
But what's the answer to my question? Why would they feel the need to tell the BBC in advance that they're going to bring down Building 7?
Oh, I would see in the sense that they told him like, oh, Building 7's down, to kind of have that live action drama of, them telling the people and then further being traumatized that a whole building collapsed.
It's not like it's not like the whole world wasn't already paying attention and wouldn't have otherwise known. Just see, to create layer upon layer of being caught is absurd. These are like low-level people at the BBC that would have to know about it too. To tell so many people about it, it's absurd.
Here's an interesting idea here that the CIA has done and is known for doing so many messed up things that people are just ready to believe anything. They feel so powerless, impotent to change anything. You think about what Megan Murphy was saying earlier, where she was saying,
John's giving me all the standard 9/11 lines.
Yeah.
Tell it to the New York City firefighters, John. I'm not presenting myself as an expert. I'm like a juror. Like when there's a trial and there's expert witnesses, the jury sits there and listens to the different experts. They're not experts themselves. So that's the position I'm in, and that most people are, and we're not experts. So I have no idea about what steel melting. I'm listening to all the experts. And the ones who are talking about steel are ignoring what the New York City firefighter said.
Steel melts at 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's in Dennis Kucinich's article. And the bomb.
It's not only like melting it. It's that the structure was degraded because of Tower 1 landing on it. So it was a combination of the heat and also.
Okay. So Jeff, nobody in the chat has actually addressed what you just said about that one thing. So that would be good if somebody.
They never do.
I'm just simply saying that's one thing that would be very good for people to address. That's an interesting thing because that did exist.
I think we can all agree on, whether you want to call it opportunism or a complete orchestrated cabal, the events that have transpired are absolutely heinous and, need to be stopped by the American people. And I think in a way to do that is to reconcile the true events of that day, or to reconcile how we were misled, or our members, our representatives were misled to basically, funnel us into a never-ending war, conflict overseas.
Well, we're still waiting for the rest of the papers on John F. Kennedy, on Epstein Island, right?
Well, but you notice, you see what I'm saying with all these controversies and with war crimes also, there are always some credible people, meaning people who have a reputation, that they've already established before the thing they're addressing, who speak out against it. Now, you notice with the 9/11 thing, there's nobody who is well known as a truth teller who's screaming about this. So I'm like, why? And the only answer I ever get is not believable, is they're afraid. What? They risk their lives in every other situation, but they're afraid of this? Who has spoken out about 9/11 has gotten killed, threatened, or beaten up? I haven't heard of a single person.
I will say in the interview that you said you watched, Jeff, you did hear him talk about his two friends how they died of cancer, and he makes the admission that he himself knows of the capacity that government agencies have to do this to their enemies, and they do it overseas, but he doesn't have any credible evidence that they do it to enemies here. I feel like that at some point when you just have the prospect of what's the CIA's engagement in killing Patrice Lumumba, you have all these different events where you see the extents that these people can go. That might be
Okay, that's fair.
enough.
That's fair. He did mention that, and I remember. But I don't know. But for that theory to hold water, you would have to say that all that great investigative journalists and Scott Ritter and all these people who are big truth tellers, that was their thought, that they think they're going to be given cancer by some means, and that's why they're not speaking out. That's what they think.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think Scott Ritter knows firsthand how dishonest some of these characters can be.
Yeah, but Scott Ritter is fearless. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and
why is it that only with this issue people like him are too scared to speak out or too naive or something?
To that point, I could go on the street corner and I could ask people, who is Scott Ritter? And I would have a lot of people tell me they have no idea who he is.
What does it have to do with what I'm saying, though?
That there may be people you just don't know about them.
No, I know, but why aren't there any well-known people who have a reputation as great truth tellers, either analysts or investigative journalists,
who have chosen not to come out and say it was really a demolition? That's what you're saying, right, Jeff?
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's the reason for that? The only thing I've ever heard is, they're all afraid, and I don't buy that. Is there any other reason?
Well, I've heard there are like some demolition experts. I think there's this one out of Alaska who, just because we have this new technology, can simulate the, construction or how the buildings fell that day, as opposed to mathematically how like a natural cascading of structures would be versus a controlled demolition. I can't remember.
Well, you've just made my point. Some unknown person in Alaska. Not
unknown. He's a professor in architecture, which I feel holds some credibility. And in his interview,
what about Glenn Greenwald? What about Matt Taibbi? What about Scott Ritter? What about people? What about people like that?
Said he was approached. I want to say a few years after 9/11. And he said him and his wife had just had a few kids, and he basically said, "Get away from me. I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole." And just recently, he said he had touched it. He did this reconstruction. He said, "Because I'm old, my kids are established. If they come for me, they come for me." That admission alone is striking. That shows that there was a concerted effort on his part to not do anything while he was young and while it was in the papers, and to be that active force to go against the credible narrative.
T-Bone, you're not listening to me. He's known because he came on Jimmy Dore, but he wasn't known as being a truth teller or an investigative journalist apart from this issue. That's what I'm saying.
T-Bone, do you have his name? I'm sorry.
No, of course not. This is what they, and they talk about.
I thought he was talking about the guy you're talking about.
I think
Morgan.
He is.
Yeah.
Well, he's not well known though. I'm not saying that only well-known people are believable. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's pretty odd that nobody well-known is on board with these theories. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I would say that I'm providing you with a representative who is speaking out about some inconsistencies that day, the architect who has now come out, and at the time he didn't want to touch it. So there are people.
Well, no, but he's saying,
he's so well known you don't know his name.
Maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying.
No, here's what he's saying. I think, Morgan, what Jeff is saying is he's known now after coming on Jimmy Dore and talking about this particular issue. In other words, he doesn't have expertise on the collapse of other things that has already established him as an expert in the eyes of the world. Let's put it that way. It's like Barack Obama.
I'm talking about people like Scott Ritter and Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi.
But I was saying it's like giving Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize before he's done anything.
How about Seymour Hersh? There's another one. Very famous.
I'll concede to that. But Jeff, there's also a sense of like these people who are happy with their establishment ties, their access. Why doesn't are some of our politicians call what's happening in Gaza just a
But they don't.
genocide or
But
ethnic
they don't
cleansing? I mean,
otherwise take that position. They're willing to risk themselves with other issues.
not
Seymour Hersh doesn't
I see.
expose war
Seymour Hersh,
crimes.
yeah.
So here's an example, right? What
Career suicide.
What career suicide? What career?
They keep
In
saying
fact,
that, but
you know
they're-
it's
but they're
more.
not
You know it's more
explaining
career suicide is if you didn't take your COVID vaccine when you worked in a corporation and they fired you. That was career suicide. If you say I don't think Russia is wrong and Putin is right, that people lost their jobs over things like that. Look
Right.
at Tucker Carlson lost his job. Scott wasn't talking about 9/11, and they went after him because he was opposing a war policy.
Yeah.
So
So he takes risks.
And he's
All these
still
great
taking the
truth
risks.
tellers take risks. Yeah. So you can't say that they're afraid. It makes no sense because they've proven over and over again that they're not afraid. So it must be some other reason. I guess it's they're stupid.
It kind of cut out.
yeah. He was just saying that we were giving examples of people who have taken risks prior to this, who continue
John,
to take
John
risks.
Somerville knows all the standard lines. The other thing they always say is watch, Loose Change. That's one of the famous documentaries.
Yes.
Or watch some other documentary, and your eyes will be open. They always say you just got to watch this documentary.
Now, I think here, let me just say one thing here. I think I'm a little bit more even-headed tonight because I'm drinking a Pinot Grigio, an Italian organic wine, very light and smooth, at only $12. It is Italian, but Jeff is very heated and he's got the blood flowing. He's emotional, and it's because he's drinking a red wine. A Spanish wine, no
Yeah.
less. See, that's where he's getting that heat from.
I did not know I was going to
Exactly.
strike such a chord by picking up such discussion.
It's
We
all
didn't
right.
say it at the beginning. We got right into it with Megan Murphy.
Yes, we did. That's right.
Oh, maybe.
They're all like, okay, great. They love me, but they can't say what I got wrong. No, not a single person even tried. Here's Hassan.
Here's
Thank you,
Hassan.
Hassan. I love you. Let's share a summer home together on
Well,
Cape
no,
Cod.
yeah, no, he's a honey broker. You got to get some of his honey. So there you go.
Oh.
All right, we got one more clip, right? We only had
Yes,
two?
we do.
And I will play it for you guys. This is essentially
Now that I
on-
totally decimated this man's credibility, let's give you a chance.
No,
to-
you
Did not.
didn't.
I
No.
still find him highly credible.
No, I do
And-
too. I do too.
Okay.
I'm just
Let me
kidding.
play
It's a
the clip.
joke. Go ahead.
I think that the people who are hiding the truth about 9/11 are capable of murder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess that would be obvious since 3,000 people were murdered that day.
Just like Libya. We were the ones that caused Gaddafi's death because Hillary Clinton played a game over there. And I was the one that went over there during the war. Gaddafi asked me to come over. I took a Biden staffer and a Bush staffer and a film crew leader from ABC1 in New York, Larry Menti, with me, and a cameraman because I didn't want the CIA to set me up. I hand carried the letter back from Gaddafi offering to resign. The U.S. didn't want him to resign. They wanted to kill him.
Why?
Because Gaddafi, and I met him 3 times. I took Biden on my second trip to Libya, by the way. He went with me when I spoke to the whole country. And every meeting I had with Gaddafi, he wanted 2 things. He wanted to unite the African continent into a group of nations economically, like like the European economy. He wanted to base it on the gold standard. And the U.S. and Europe didn't want that. And the other thing is they wanted control of his oil, and they wanted control of his sovereign wealth. So Gaddafi had to go. That's outrageous, and it's wrong.
Yeah, but that I think sounds right to me.
I mean, but we've allowed so many of our kids to be drawn into conflicts, to be killed. And these people doing this they've never served in any capacity in our country. They've never been in the military. They've never served on a fire ground. And it's outrageous that they think they can get away with this and sit back and make all this money. It's outrageous.
I couldn't agree more.
That is so interesting because typically back then he would have been a hard right-wing conservative, and now he's just being very straightforward about things that people do know about, have seen, because Gaddafi was changing Libya, and this is sort of like these groupings of people that have been changed in the election, where you have Bobby Kennedy, Trump is anti-war. Who would have thought that these types of people would be saying again, "Hey, this is what's going on." It is fascinating that whole interview.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching it. Maybe that's
Right.
for
Well,
lack
Tucker
of a better
Carlson
term.
is, if not the #1 podcast in the world, close to it. So
Yeah,
maybe
Joe Rogan
this,
is the number one, but
well, close to it, right? Am I right?
Right.
Close, close to #1.
Well,
I think,
I mean, if you're looking for a boost to have your point of view heard,
it's not Ben Shapiro who just served up pancakes to Zelensky on his interview of Zelensky. Did you see
Notice
that?
he doesn't say what facts I'm ignoring. I don't know. But I'm ignoring something.
but okay, so to I don't know, to pick at you a little more, Jeff. So the people that the beginning of what this guy is describing, what happened in Libya, is essentially like a cabal. This conspiracy that we would proclaim, oh, this person's being hysterical for saying that it's all interconnected.
Colored revolutions.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. Or we have to get this guy. He's evil. I do you not. I think
You're
the
saying
people
there's
who
a
have-
parallel?
I think that there's like a parallel of being critical of what's happening and what's transpired. We now understand what happened through, I believe, WikiLeaks. But if we didn't have WikiLeaks, this would all just be some kind of speculation. It wouldn't be something that we could point to as proof. So I don't really fault some of these people. I will give you to you, Jeff, that there are people who take it way too far, and that it's I don't know, the dancing Israelis and stuff. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know, but I think the bigger issue is what has transpired after the fact and what continues to transpire. You look at what happened, like I brought up October 7th, how we have all this evidence of that they knew about it beforehand. They let these people die, let these people be taken hostage, so they could have this reason to just demolish this entire area and
Right.
basically
Yeah,
subject 2 million people.
it might be that there were people in the U.S. government who knew about 9/11 in advance. It might be that they orchestrated it. I mean, this is the sort of thing that should be exposed, but it doesn't mean that there was a controlled demolition. And if there was, then you.
I mean, that's so. I do think that is true. Actually, what Jeff is saying, and also on this question of Libya and all of these things, these things weren't necessarily secret. You had the Project for the New American Century. You had the that paper called A Clean Break, New Strategy for Securing the Realm. There was something else. I think Wesley Clark said that in one of these study groups, there was a list of countries in the order that they were going to take them down. So you do have to have the population. You have to have some semblance that it's legal to go and overthrow these countries, and maybe using that's the opportunism, I guess, argument that I'm making in one sense. But
Well, I just wanna
what Jeff
thank,
is saying is the one specific thing, isn't it? Right?
I think
No,
that's
I
what
wanna-
he's saying, which is that's fine. I feel like just this, I don't know.
But these things we know these things happened. It wasn't just WikiLeaks. It wasn't because somebody discovered the demolition that now we know all these other things were happening. All these other things are very public. The policies of overthrowing countries is public without a controlled demolition. Let's put it that way.
I feel like I guess the WikiLeaks, I would say you saw the malintent, whereas
yeah.
what's open is this like posture of like we're the righteous one, that manufactures consent, whereas opposed to kind of being confronted with
I agree, because you have to get people to think tribally in order to get them to do something that would be devastatingly evil.
yes.
I don't disagree with that at all. It's part of the propaganda.
I guess that's what I was kind of getting at with the people may say, oh, that's a conspiracy. We're doing the right thing over there. We're the better ones. We're bringing democracy.
Of course.
Whereas when you're confronted with, actual correspondence and
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
the moral decay.
Well, I just want to thank you for, unlike Jose, you didn't like bury your face in your hands saying, oh my God, what's wrong with him? How can he not see the truth? I can't believe this is happening.
He doesn't do that.
He did do that. He did do that when I was disagreeing with
Oh,
him
my
about
God.
the immigration issues. Oh my God. The guy said that there was a meeting between Columbia University. Did you not see that? Did you not see that?
Well, I think that topic is very, very emotional. That guy still his child's been born, and we don't know. I guess it looks like a higher chance that he is going to be deported, and
Yeah.
and I don't know. I feel like that one's a very emotional.
It is
thing to
emotional.
be
Well, I got
trying to
emotional tonight too, because I'm emotional about firefighters because I really appreciate that they risk their lives. And when people just ignore them, I'm like, what are you talking about?
They're risking their lives and they're not shooting.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Oh, they're the what's that phrase? Keith Richards and the Rolling Stones did it at the 9/11 concert. What's that song?
I don't know.
Not the cream of the crop. It means like you're the angel. What the hell
Creme
is
de
that
la
say?
creme.
No, I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know. That's I wouldn't know. I'm sorry.
It just
Me
means
neither.
you're like, salt of the earth. That was it.
Salt.
Salt of the earth. Yeah. Salt of the earth.
The necessity is
Like
that
you,
kind of
like
a-
you said,
No,
Ron,
salt
that's
of the
another
earth.
part of it. They're not like, unlike police officers, some are good cops, some are bad cops, but there are hardly any bad firefighters.
Well, I mean, you go back and watch the whole MASH series. Here these guys are. They're putting people together as fast as they're getting killed. They're not shooting at all. They're the battlefield, medics who they're like
they're the salt of the earth too.
Unsung
Morgan is as
unsung
well.
heroes.
Ryan, you're semi salt of the earth, and I'm a terrible person. So now
No,
we
you're not.
No.
You just don't see things right now, Jeff. But we'll put some
it's the
documentaries.
you
in
know
front
what,
of you.
Jeff? Why don't you try a white wine? You'd see things a little bit differently.
No, I'm happy.
This is my second white wine in a row on this show.
All right, whatever works for you. All right, time for dinner.
Yeah.
Thank you, Morgan, and thanks also. Oh, he agrees finally. He's just throwing me a bone there. T-Bone is throwing me a T-bone.
You need a T-bone, Jeff.
Morgan, thanks also for helping us book Dennis Kucinich. We sent out invitations through multiple channels, and it seems that you reaching out to him is the one that made it happen. So
Thanks,
Yes, I left
Morgan.
an impression on
Pulling
him.
the strings.
how do you know Dennis anyway?
Um.
Let me guess. Tinder.
Oh God, Jeff.
No.
Bad
I
joke.
formally
man
met him
seeks
at-
younger woman.
Jeff. Read what Odeni says. Repent or face eternal damnation.
Oh my
All
God.
right.
No,
Oh my God.
So
How
the
dare
RG stuff with
you.
Veterans for Peace, that's kind of how he knew who I was. But he had never met me in person. I had called him maybe one or two times to tell him what I do, ask him if he could do some stuff, and he obliged. I think some stuff was with Jose and International Peace Coalition. And then I met him at the Say No to Nuclear War event, where we actually had a little longer of a discussion about who I was and who he was. And so that's
Cool.
All right. If that's the story you want to run
the
with.
story I want to go with.
So any
right.
other success stories on Tinder, or he's the only
No,
one?
definitely all bad stories. Get away from that app.
Nothing wrong with a what do they call it? A May-September or May-December relationship?
Which way do you swipe to get rid of it all? Swipe right? Swipe right? I
Left,
don't know.
right.
I don't know.
All right.
No.
All right.
All right,
Join
you
us
guys.
tomorrow night on Ask the Inspector at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's with our pal Scott Ritter. And we'll be back next Thursday night
Yeah.
with that's the May 1st episode with our friend from Austin, right? What's his name?
Mark.
Exactly.
Mark.
Just simply
Not
Mark.
Hochar. Not Hochar. No.
No, the other Mark.
The
I
other
forgot
Mark.
his name.
Wine. Wine.
A great wine guru from Texas will be our guest.
That's right.
Next week. Thanks to our beloved audience. Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Right.